Clayton, thank you so much for taking the time to chat product marketing and really like, this go to market function, which, as I've dug in the last couple years and have been talking to a lot of product marketers on this podcast, it's partially for me to continue to learn about the function, but also just wanting to kind of spread awareness because, as I've said it before and I'll continue to say, PMM seems to mean a lot for a lot of
Yeah.
different organizations. But before we dig in there, why don't you take a quick second to kind of introduce yourself and tell folks a little bit about your background? How'd you get into product marketing?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a product marketer that's got over 12 years of total marketing experience. I cut my teeth on the growth marketing side though in the first half of my career. But I ended up finding that I love being closer to the product. I like sort of all the variability that comes into product marketing. For those that have done growth marketing, like I think yourself, it tends to be a lot of like incremental improvements, and we're trying to always sort of get better and better at the same stuff we're doing, to be adding new channels and whatnot. Or product marketing, there's lots of different pieces to it, whether it's figuring out positioning and messaging, pricing, customer research, working with product to put together the roadmap, and we're always got new products and things that we're working on. So I love that variability. Since I got into it, I've done product marketing on both B2B and B2C tech, including being a product marketer at LinkedIn on 2 consumer marketing teams there, as well as head of marketing at 2 early stage startups where I was the first marketing hire. So definitely being able to use both the growth marketing and product marketing, but really early on, product marketing I think is one of the most important pieces, because before we can start putting together ad campaigns or email campaigns, we got to know who we're talking to, what we're saying to them, all that good stuff. So yeah, I've been able to use both of those.
Awesome. Well, let's dig into challenges and from your,
Sure.
many, many years of experience, what are the biggest challenges that product marketers face? And, we could start off with that. And then of course, like what tips would you give folks around overcoming those?
For sure. I think the biggest one, which is a problem with a lot of different roles, but I think is especially true with product marketing, is prioritization. Generally, we don't have as many product marketers as we have product managers. And so what that generally means is we have to figure out what are the things we're going to support and what are the things we're not going to support. I usually try to look at where product marketing has the most leverage, the ability to sort of make that better. So things like back-end improvements that we're doing to speed up the product, for instance. There's probably a product manager and an engineering and maybe even design on that, but they tend to not be things that are going to be able to move the needle for the company. And so there's probably not product marketing there. But even amongst that, generally, there are going to be even multiple things that we might be user-facing and whatnot that we want to put product marketing on, but have to prioritize because we can't support all of them. So I think that's a big challenge. And then the other one, it kind of depends a little bit on the company, but generally I find sort of making sure that you're in the room at the right time, so to speak, is also a big piece, especially at times at some of the larger companies I've been at. You have where product engineering design maybe are sort of working together and leaving out product marketing earlier in the product development phase. And that tends to make it harder for us long term because we don't necessarily know how things were built. We aren't able to sort of bring in some of the knowledge about how the go-to-market is going to be put together as well. So sometimes, for instance, we might need to add a deep link into the product, into the app, in order to be able to drive the email campaign or the ad campaign to the right part of the product experience. And that's actually something engineering has to build. It has to be put into the scope of the project. And so if product marketing isn't brought in until the end, where we say, okay, we've built this, now go find an audience for it and go take it to market, there may be things we actually need in the product in order to be able to do that. And so I think one of those challenges, like I said, is getting in the room at the right times. And so what I've generally tried to do to overcome that is asking my product and engineering counterparts just to invite me to every meeting. I can decide whether or not it's a good use of my time. I can sort of work on other things during, but it's helpful for me to hear what's going on. And that way I'm never out of the loop for something and sort of coming in too late. And then also just continuing to sort of figure out and maybe it's bug your product managers on what they're working on and seeing if there's some projects that they've started to work on. Maybe they're in the early phases of that you haven't heard about yet. Dig in there and see if you should be getting involved as well.
Now, do you think that product marketing should sit under marketing or product? I've heard sort of different
Yeah.
takes on it. What's kind of your take on it?
Yeah, I haven't done the under product experience yet. I've only been under marketing. So it's hard for me to know in that capacity. I do think I'm intrigued by by product marketing being under product because one of the biggest team cross-functional teammates that you need to work with is obviously the product managers, and it is a lot easier to get in the room to know what they're doing if you're reporting up to the same manager. And so I think that could help a lot with that. But then you got on the other side, obviously you need to work with your social brand comms, like other sort of teammates to put together the go-to-market strategy as well. And so maybe you end up having issues there. You just sort of replace one strong relationship with another strong relationship. So I think there's definitely pros and cons to both. But I am intrigued a lot because I think you tend to it's easier to put together that relationship, I think, with the marketing side, even if you are on, say you report it up to product, just because I think that relationship is a little more natural. And then whereas maybe with product and engineering, it's a little bit harder. And so maybe it actually would be easier to do that. So I guess not able to really give you a great answer other than I think there are pros and cons to both. And I'm interested to see sort of where the industry nets out, because I definitely see reporting up to product being more and more common.
Yeah, and I've also heard from I think folks who have been product marketers for longer in their careers. I've heard that they started off in product and
Mm,
they were like early product managers who
yeah.
then they found themselves doing a lot of these marketing launch oriented activities, because
Hmm.
I think on one side you're working very closely with as a PM, right? Product or a just a product manager. You're
Yeah.
working with engineering on roadmap and features and very technical stuff, product oriented
Yeah.
stuff. But then you kind of would find yourself on the other side of the spectrum, which was like all really, I think, owning a lot of these go to market functions and marketing tasks. And so I've heard a lot of that, right? Like, and then they were like, these folks, a lot of them, I won't say all of them, but they would say, well, then the organization decided to break out a product marketing function
Yeah.
to really double down on the go to market piece.
Yeah. I would say, honestly, it sounds like they didn't have the product marketing resources. So obviously they had to do
Mm.
that. And I've seen a little bit also the other way where people have been product marketers and sort of they were maybe more technical and moved into product management as well. And then I think the other piece is, which I was going to also maybe talk about a little bit later, but is it's really difficult to get as an entry level person into product marketing, right? There's nobody really coming out of college and being a product marketer, because I think one, it's an important role. It's also one where you have to sort of have some industry
Mm.
experience and everything. It's a strategic role. And so they don't even really have like entry level product marketer roles. I know that some larger organizations, like I think Google has a rotational associate product marketer opportunity. But for most people, they don't start their career out of college as a product marketer, which is sort of interesting because the things I found later when I became a product marketer, the things you actually learn in college as a marketing major, a lot of that is core product marketing. It's pricing, packaging, messaging, positioning, like competitive research, customer research, all that sort of stuff that really for most marketing roles that people are getting into, they don't really need to know that sort of stuff. But it is super helpful for product marketing and tech, or maybe brand marketing and sort of like CPG or other industries. But you do sort of, like you said, most product marketers come from some other role. And I would say
Mm.
probably even product managers as well. Most people, again, aren't coming out as product managers, they're usually engineers or something else. Like I know one of my past companies that one of our product managers actually started in customer success, and then eventually she tried out product marketing, and then eventually moved into product management. And so I think it's both of those roles are one where generally someone starts out somewhere else in their career and eventually moves into them as they become more senior.
Yeah, like for example, my co-founder, he was in sales and then moved into product marketing, and he was like, he makes
Yeah,
a joke. He's like, "Oh boy, I remember as a salesperson, we were constantly nagging product marketing for like
yeah.
sales collateral, right? It's part of what we've been trying to solve here." So he's like, then I went to the other side. so so it's
Yeah,
interesting because
I was gonna say, yeah, you and I worked together when we are both at Twitter, and different teams, and I was on sales there, and I always pull some of that in as well. I think it's helpful as a product marketer, or really just a marketer in general, to understand the sales side, because in B2B product marketing, you're doing a lot of developing sales collateral, training the sales teams, but also you're trying to understand from them what they're seeing as the front lines from customers, and trying to understand, okay, why are we losing deals and whatnot. So it is helpful for sure to understand their side and be able to put your self in their shoes. I think one of the things that as a product marketer, that's another challenge maybe is sales teams, I think more than any other team, tends to have a wider variety of like technical acumen. And so when you're putting together collateral or you're doing together a training, there's going to be some that they really understand the technical sides of the product, and others that they're just really good relationship people, really good salespeople, and that the technical side isn't as good for them. And I've seen great salespeople on both sides. And so, but yeah, it is helpful. I think the fact that both of these roles come from generally being in some other cross-functional
mm,
team that you need to work with, that you have that context when you're working with them as well.
it's interesting you bring that up because, in this world where we've been talking a lot about product-led growth, right, the
Yeah,
last couple years, and also sort of the explosion of inbound and content and the amount of
yeah,
information that buyers have when they actually raise their hand to speak to sales. And so, there's been this debate, right, around like, well, the salespeople who were not that product savvy, who were not as technical, who were better at
hmm
the soft skills and the relationship building, are they going to be less relevant in the world where, folks are coming in
yeah,
expecting more of a expert, right, on the other side?
yeah. They're more educated themselves already. Yeah,
Yeah, what's your take on that? Like, have you seen?
yeah, yeah. I think it's an interesting thought. I haven't sort of thought about that yet. I still I think it definitely means that um, you either need as a salesperson to up your game, so to speak, and really understand that. Or what a lot of people also are doing is they'll have, I think, more and more sales engineering on the call as well. So you've got that really technical person that's involved earlier in the process, and maybe even putting together demos, or just being there to answer those technical questions, and then having a sales rep there to sort of handle other things. I think it's helpful, honestly, because it allows you to break up some of the work too, because there may be, after a call, there's probably questions about both, okay, what's the package going to look like? What's the pricing? All that sort of stuff that an AE needs to take care of, and maybe work with the sales management. And then there may be other things where they're questioning certificates that they have, that the product has, or sort of technical aspects. And can it do this? Can it do that? Can we, if I sign the deal, and are we able to build this thing in? When I was at High Five, which was a video conferencing
Mhm.
startup, we had a lot of questions about like network capabilities and all that sort of stuff. And so it was helpful to have a sales engineer in there who knew a little bit more of those aspects. So I think it's helpful to break up that, and maybe it needed even more, like I said earlier in the process. Now, if people are already coming in knowing the basics of the product, then you likely need either AEs that are more sort of technical, or you need, like I said, a tag team earlier in the
Mm.
process that can handle both sides of the sale. And I think that's helpful if you're able to have it. Although I think obviously the smaller your deals are, the fewer people you can afford to be paying to
Yeah.
close those deals. But hopefully they're bigger because people are coming in already having the education in the first place. Hopefully you're sort of saving that cost in other places, basically.
Yeah, totally. If you think about the priority that PMM should focus on in a world
Mm.
like you said, there's prioritization was like, a huge
Yeah,
issue,
yeah.
right? Like, how do you just say, okay, this is going to be my number one sort of column or category of priorities, right? And why?
Yeah, I think some of it depends on the organization. So we've been talking a lot about B2B, but B2C, you're going to have different goals as a company and different goals as a product marketing org as well. So I think a few of the things that you can think about as your number one, your North Star, customer happiness being a big one. What is our customer satisfaction? Are we tracking that? And are we figuring out, especially as they're product related things, but are there other things in our customer experience that we can improve? So I think that's a big piece that product marketing should be involved in tracking and trying to figure out and solve how can we continue to get that better. Another one is product awareness and product usage. And so generally when we're launching new products, for instance, it's on product marketing to make sure that we're driving awareness for that, and that we're driving usage and adoption. And then I think really all of this should ladder up though to revenue. And so how are we able to drive revenue, and how are we able to track that back to activities that product marketing is doing? Especially as you are a smaller org, it gets harder to do this. The bigger and bigger you start to look at the product marketing org overall to see what are you tracking towards. But those are the things that I think we should be looking at, all three of those. And then how to do that really is a product marketing should know the customer or the user better than anyone else, and not know who they are, but also know who they're not, which tends to be a
Mm.
problem with earlier stage startups who are still trying to figure out what they're building, who they're building it for, and are worried about alienating users. That it's actually really important to also say that you're not for certain customers, so that your sales team isn't wasting their time, and then also helps the people who are your target customers know who they are. While at the same time, I think the other piece you need to balance is sort of long term where we think the company is going. Because early on we may have a really, really small ICP, but long term we may think that that might be able to expand a little bit more as we are able to realize the full company mission. So know the customer and the user really well, then being able to use the insights that you know or that you have through research, interviews, even maybe it's product usage metrics, to influence product to build the right things for your users, so that we're able to really just going towards that customer happiness and also revenue, that we're able to drive customers that are or drive product that is making everyone excited, and they want to continue to use it. They want to maybe buy more, expand, maybe they want more likely to renew, all those sort of things. And then also you need to create a go-to-market that strategy that's focused on building awareness for and usage for the things that we're building. And so sometimes that's launches, and sometimes that's also going back to the website. So it's not always brand new things we're
Mm.
launching. It's also refining things that we've already built as well. Because especially again earlier in your company life cycle, you're going to know less. You're going to have to iterate more and more, and then later on, maybe you're doing less of those things. But doing all three of those really to make sure that ultimately we're driving revenue and product usage are really the things I think product marketing should be focused on.
Now, if you were to think about one actionable tip that you would give a product marketer who's just got into the role that maybe you
Yeah.
wish someone told you when you first got in there.
Yeah, it might seem obvious, but I think the key to being a great PMM is deep understanding of both the customer and user and the product. And sometimes people have one or the other. I know for me, when I was in growth marketing, at Hi-Fi. That's actually where I made the transition to product marketing. I started, I mean, I guess a little bit of both, but it was really getting close to product and really understanding the product, technically how it works, and being really a product expert, being excited about the new features the engineering team is working on, and building relationships there. While at the same time, I was the person that was doing our customer case studies and those sort of things as well. And so being able to have a deep understanding of both sides, because then you end up being someone that people can go to, right, and be that strategic person when they're thinking, what should we be building? You can actually help and be that resource for other teams, or for the product team, and then for the sales and marketing team, be a resource for them on, this is how the pitch should be. This is the sort of things we should be putting in our ads and testing. And so being that expert on both of those aspects allows you to be a really good resource to others, so that they start to come to you, and it starts to help with the problem, the challenge I was talking about earlier, about being in the right rooms at the right time, because now you become a valuable resource to make sure that they're doing their job the best, because you're this expert now in that sort of in those two aspects of the customer and the product.
Awesome. Clayton, thank you so much for joining us today. Very much
For
appreciated.
sure.
If folks wanted to, let's say, follow you on social or connect to get some advice from you, what would
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
best channels?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best. So linkedin.com/in/Clayton Pritchard, or just search Clayton Pritchard. I am still on Twitter, although I tend to be less sort of business focused there at C_Pritchard. And then I'm trying to get active on the threads now, Pritchard.Clayton there too. So all those places, but LinkedIn's probably the best, especially for professional stuff.
Isn't it crazy that when we were at Twitter? I guess, would you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
consider us having been early Twitter? So, kind of. I mean,
Yeah, it's still relevant. I mean, early now. I mean, we were
yeah,
there 3 CEOs ago.
yeah,
So when Dick Costello was the
yeah,
CEO, I know it was post IPO, but not long after. But yeah, it's crazy how things have changed. I posted something actually recently on LinkedIn. I was like, am I still ex Twitter, or am I now XX? Now that they've
yeah,
changed the name, I think we can all of us that worked there when it was called Twitter, I think we can still be ex Twitter. But at least until there's actually some brand recognition around the X name. I was
yeah,
actually watching like local news today, and they're definitely not calling it X yet. So
yeah.
we'll see. They've got a ways to go to change that habit that they've built over the last decade plus.
Absolutely. I don't know how that's going to happen, but you know what? I guess I'll trust Elon that he knows how to
Yeah, yeah.
navigate those waters. Awesome. Well, Clayton, have a great, great afternoon, and thanks again.
Thanks for having me. See ya.